There we are. So, thanks everyone for joining us on, again, another special edition of the International Perspectives on Corpus Technology for Language Learning seminar series, hosted today at the University of Queensland. We are probably going to launch season 4 of the seminar series sometime in probably more, I guess, the next semester now. So later on in the year, we will be back with the full seminar series for people who are interested in that. Today, however, is the second of a kind of two-part special series. The first one ran a couple of weeks ago, where we introduced a new online open access textbook containing ready-made DDL lessons made by practicing teachers and researchers in Brazil. It's an open access book that we shared with everybody. I'll also post the links to that book at the end of the talk. Carolina, our co-host for today, will also be maintaining the chat and making sure that everybody has access to that. Today, though, we're interested in a new Corpus tool that has recently been released. This is a tool developed based on feedback from real secondary students in Australia, and as well as the feedback from a number of you who tuned in to the seminar series previously. You've given us your feedback on the beta version of the platform before the current version that we have went live on the new CorpusMate.com URL within the last couple of weeks. So before we begin, just like to give a quick acknowledgement of the country. It's customary for universities in Australia where with any public engagement of this nature, whether that's online or in person, we always like to acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands on which we meet today, or in this case, the online space. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country, while recognizing their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. So today, basically, I forgot to ask somebody to introduce me, so I'm probably just best doing it myself. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm a researcher in corpus linguistics and second language acquisition and second language writing at the University of Queensland. Published extensively on the use of language corpora for language teaching and learning, otherwise known as data-driven learning, which is what we're going to be discussing today. I'm also the current associate editor of the Journal of English for Academic Purposes, and I sit on a number of editorial boards related to computer-assisted language learning. So that's a little bit about me, but what I'm going to be presenting today is now about how to, the kind of the history of a new Corpus tool that has been released within the last few days. I'm not sure why my PowerPoint keeps switching like this. Must be doing something wrong. But anyway, I'm just going to stick with it. And this is the CorpusMate platform. So for those of you who are new to the field of data-driven learning, you're not sure what it is, but you've thought that you might be interested in coming along to today's workshop based on the poster. We've been using language corpora, or the basically very large electronic collections of searchable text. These are corpora, and we've been using these in education for decades now. Whether you know it or not, corpora have been used widely in the fields of language testing, textbook materials creations, academic syllabi, lexicography and research since the advent of computers, essentially. But then more recently, with broadband internet and the availability of Corpora for download, Corpus tools, another one of which we're going to be introducing for you today. There has been, as recent bibliometric research has shown, a significant increase in the number of research publications, teaching materials, and online resources that are getting both language teachers and their students to consult Corpora for language learning across a range of different domains, whether that's for general English, English for academic purposes, English for specific purposes, and many more. And this is basically termed data-driven learning, as coined by Tim Johns in the early 1990s. So, as I mentioned before, data-driven learning is essentially what we term the direct, hands-on use of corpus linguistics in education. By direct, I mean that unlike most big textbooks that you might publish, say from Cambridge University Press or so on, that have been scoped and sequenced using corpus data and may contain activities derived from corpus data in the form of general corpora or learner corpora, for example. The direct use of corpus linguistics generally involves a teacher and or students sitting down at a computer or with a handheld device, and they're going into corpora through the use of various offline and online corpus tools to consult and query language corpora for a range of purposes, pedagogical applications. This generally works, and so the research, or to summarize a whole host of research, the theory behind it is that at the individual level, if students are consulting corpora to learn about language through language, they are essentially reading concordances, analyzing keyword lists, looking at collocate information, and increasingly looking at this data through the use of visual graphs and charts. And their exposure to this data is helping them to understand the patterns of language as used in authentic text across a range of domains. When it is put into classroom practice, not only are we getting the benefits of discovery learning at the individual level with students going into corpus and playing with that data for language learning, but we're also getting opportunities for socio-cultural learning at the same time, teacher and peer mediated activities, discussions around the corpus data and what they're finding, and all of this leads to reflection, opportunities for engagement, and hopefully for meaningful learning to occur. Data-driven learning typically takes the form of reading what you can see here in the bottom right hand of the screen, concordance lines, where we search for a word, in this case results. We'll then get a whole host of examples of that search term in the form of a concordance with the search term in the middle and some context to the left or the right, or maybe in sentence view with whole sentences containing that search term. More recent tools, for example, Lingual, as you see here on the left, will provide a range of visualizations looking at frequency of particular search terms from corpus data, from which students can make an informed decision about the likelihood of a particular verb, for example, in this construction, being more frequent or more likely to occur than some of the others. Collocate information of the type that you might get in Sketch Engine. So this is automatically generated using statistical methods to reveal some of the most important and salient constructions within the corpus data that can be teachable, embedded into language learning activities and materials, and even some more modern, more powerful tools are now producing visualizations of this kind of word. Scatter plot, for example, this is taken from Voyant tools. So lots of, and basically as the technology is developed over the last 2 decades, we're finding more and varied ways into corpus data that is allowing people who are consulting corpora to gain access to the data in ways that helps them achieve whatever learning goal that they've set out for themselves, and also helps particular learners who may be more may rely more on textual data, or visual data, or statistical data. And in my own previous research, I've shown that different learners like to look at different things in corpus data and use corpora for different purposes. Now, in a kind of book chapter that we wrote last year, but it's still yet to come out, hopefully it won't be too much longer, myself and Professor Alex Bolton, who's the main editor of the journal Recall, and his one of the most widely published scholars in the field of data-driven learning, came up with a list of major issues for the field. And I don't really have time to go into the non-bolded statements here tonight. If you go into our seminar series recordings, you will see that almost all of these different issues for the field have been dealt with or are being dealt with by other researchers. So, for example, methodological rigor. If you go to maybe Tove Larsson's recording and Ellen LaFoll's recording, Martin Schweinberger, for example, will deal with this one. Applied linguists rather than teachers as the main stakeholders. That's Pascal Perez-Paredes research there. Lack of information on training provided. Nina Vatkina and many others have also talked about this. But what we're interested in, I was interested in, and I've been interested in over the last couple of years, is DDL studies with learners other than tertiary students, especially for languages other than English. We're focusing on English today, of course, but we are dealing here with the needs of learners who are not educated university level students with high knowledge of academic English, for example, and who may also be quite technologically literate, at least in terms of the different kinds of technologies that you need to survive at the university level. A number of barriers to implementing DDL in primary, secondary, and classrooms have been identified in research, including my own research. These are just 3. I identify many more in my other edited volume on this topic. However, pedagogic processing, this is again one of Pascal Perez-Paredes' terms about how existing adult-focused corpus materials, corpus data, can be used, can be made more teachable, can be utilized in a way that leads to understanding of the corpus data that can be quite complex or maybe not particularly suitable for younger learners. Perhaps it contains some kind of sexual or drug-related references, which may be not suitable in certain more conservative contexts. If you're working in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, for example, this can be a major problem, as we've identified in previous research with work I've done in Indonesia, for example. Secondly, a lack of software for design specifically for use with younger learners. The very best software that we have, for example, Lingual, Versatext, Sketch Engine, even Skell, are probably, arguably designed with adults in mind. And while they're pretty good tools, there may be issues with the functionality and the corpus data that are underlying those tools that may make specific use with younger learners a little challenging. And then, of course, corpus literacy, which is actually a very productive area of research at the moment. And even within the last few weeks, I've noticed about 10 different papers published on this topic in various journals. In fact, somebody emailed me one only yesterday, another one. I think Tugbur Simsek, I think, has published another one of these. And I'm currently working on my own study replicating Ching Ma's work on assessing corpus literacy that she's done in the Hong Kong context, this time working with trainee teachers at a university in Vietnam, again, looking at how corpus literacy can be acquired following training in corpus techniques. But while we're making progress with these things, these are still, at present, barriers to the widespread implementation of DDL in these kind of settings. Not only that, the learners are developing also in their first language literacy. Corpus output may require significant modification to become comprehensible, and this is the case in a number of studies that I read for review, for example, as a journal editor and a journal reviewer. We get lots of papers in that are using corpora that are just not suitable for use with younger learners and would not be very comprehensible or suitable for the intended audience. And then, of course, we still need to prepare their teachers in preparing their students for data-driven learning at the same time. So we said also lots of studies going on at the moment about how we might be able to use corpora in language teaching. Lots of work being done on lesson planning at the moment, trying to boost teachers' technological, pedagogical content knowledge, or TPAC. It's quite a hot topic in lots of research at the moment, and nowhere this is no different for the use of corpora and data-driven learning as well. So with taking all of this into account, I set about a project a couple of years ago now that lasted throughout 2021, where we were looking at embedding DDL activities into the science writing component of a all-girls secondary school here in Queensland. And I did a data-driven learning workshop for the teachers in the school, and the science teachers approached me following the workshops and said that their students were struggling with understanding the use of the passive voice in science writing. And this is a key component of research reports. And what the girls were taking part in various experiments that they would do in the classroom. They have to write up a report, and when describing the methodologies that they were conducting in the classroom, the passive voice construction was a key component of that. And the teachers noticed that the learners tended to struggle with knowing when to use this construction and when not to use it, and how to use it appropriately. So in terms of the experimental setup, this paper came out last year in computer-assisted language learning. It's the Crossway and Steeples paper. Feel free to email me for a copy of that, or go and check it out on ResearchGate. We had 40 year 9 to 10 students taking this physical science elective course across 2 terms. We gave them training, specific purpose-built training online through the use of a short private online course on the use of the Skeld, Sketch Engine, and Lingual platforms. So these activities can actually be found on the Improving Writing Through Corpora course, the link of which I'm going to share with you here in the chat. It's a free to join, free to register course on corpus use, and the students' activities, the younger learners' activities, are found for anyone at the bottom of the English for Academic Purposes activities on this course. So feel free to check that out whenever you get the time. But what we're going to be doing here is, as I mentioned, those online modules dealt with the use of the passive constructions, present passive, past and perfect passive constructions. We then gave them a series of experimental tasks before and after the training to see if the corpus use was going to improve their knowledge of the passive voice in any way. We then also gave them the opportunity to freely use corpus in response to written corrective feedback that was provided on their writing. Then there are some surveys at the end of the treatment and interviews as well, together with thematic analysis. So as mentioned, the activities were designed on the Improving Writing Through Corpus platform, which again, anybody is free to join and to register. They were basically dealing with these science experiments, for example, the use of a static electric charge against deflection, so that you can see here. So they were rubbing a metal rod with a cloth, then holding it towards the running water and measuring how the static electricity would draw the water away from a straight line, and they were attempting to measure how that worked. They were also looking at wire substances and the concentration of an unknown substance through a known substance, which again is probably more science than I know, working in the field of applied linguistics, but certainly the use of the passive voice will have been very important when explaining what they were doing in these activities. So just in terms of the results, we found that overall their receptive knowledge of the passive was already very, very good, as you might expect from primarily first language users of English at the age of about 13 to 14 years old. We didn't find any significant differences in their test results, but what we did find is that in the post-test, we allowed students to use any corpus tool they wanted to check their intuition on their answers. We found that they did this very regularly, and when they did do it, they almost always got a correct answer from their attempts. Similarly, also with an error correction task that we gave them, they would get an error like this, for example, apples are picking in the fall. They replace this with the correct version of the passive voice construction. Again, no significant difference pre or post-test as we expected, but when given the opportunity to use Corpus to check their intuitions, they did so fairly regularly, and again, mostly did that with mostly resulting in a correct answer when they did. In the free production task, the learners had to use passive voice constructions to explain what happened to the package in this picture sequence. For example, the package was taken to the post office, the package was weighed, the package was stamped, the package was put on a boat, and so on. In this productive task, the girls did better on the post-test, significantly better, which we were very pleased with that result. It meant that we had some indication that the girls' use of the passive had improved following corpus training. And also when they were given the opportunity to use a corpus in the post-test, they did so fairly regularly and did so with a high degree of accuracy. Then in response to written corrective feedback provided on the students' work, this is taken from another group that we're also using Corpus at the same time, but we also did some for the science text as well. I would highlight constructions that could be resolved through Corpus consultation in yellow. Students then made revisions and highlighted those revisions in a particular color, depending on the particular tool, whether that's a Corpus tool or a non-Corpus tool that they used to make those revisions. I would also give learners URLs to the lingual platform with some key terms that they may wish to search for, as this function of lingual is pretty useful. In terms of the results, we found that the students used a range of tools, for example, Google Scholar, Dictionary.com, and Google Translate. And they used this fairly regularly with a good degree of accuracy. But we also found that learners did tend to turn to the Corpus tools as well, Skell, Sketch Engine, and Lingual. They used them more regularly than the non-Corpus tools. And again, the degree of accuracy was pretty good, with 100% of the revisions made using Skell, for example, deemed as appropriate revisions. And they did use Scale also quite a lot for resolving passive voice issues. Now, what usually happens following DDL training, and this is an issue with the field, is that when we gave them a follow-up survey, not many of the students responded to the survey, but of the ones that did, only 4 of them reported that they were still using Corpus tools. For these students, Lingual was the preferred tool, with Scale and Sketch Engine gaining only 1 vote each. You can see here the issue. These are the responses that we got. These are the students' reasons for discontinuing Corpus use after the training period was over. Mainly, I don't know how to use the tool properly. I prefer Google. Too much info is provided. Tools are too slow, and so on. So not the most positive finding, but one that is fairly common in the DDL literature, whether that's for younger learners or even for adults. In terms of the preferred Corpus tool, the overwhelming first preference was for Lingual by Jason Yang over at Taiwan. Really great tool, very streamlined, very simple to use, and you can see that those features are captured in the students' responses to their preferred Corpus tool. What did they like to use in terms of the different functions across the tools? The ability to use wildcard operators and the OR operator was seen as something that was very popular. The ability to compare results visually in Lingual, again, very popular. But also discipline specificity of the kind that you would get in Sketch Engine, for example, was also seen as an important function. So these were the top 3 by some way. When we looked at the interview data, we would then see some of the other things that they wanted to talk about. In terms of their preferences, they discussed Lingual, particularly that it is easy to use and appealing, and the discipline specificity and functionality of the Sketch Engine platform in terms of its versatility and usefulness. But note even that despite its versatility, they tended to follow up the positive comment with a negative comment. For example, here, it's a little bit complicated, or it was the hardest to use. Similarly, in terms of what they were using them to do, they tended to use the tools to find words for general and specific functions, with specific functions being the reports, science experiments, papers, and assessments that they were working on. And they plan to continue to use Corpus for this function in the future. And some of them did go on to do so, although not perhaps as many as we would have liked. Most importantly, then, were some of the things that the students pointed out in the interview data of what they would like to see in their preferred Corpus tool. Some of the issues, and the main issue that they pointed out, was related to the user experience, and particularly understanding Corpus data, the functionality that of very complex or confusing user interfaces. For example, Sketch Engine is singled out numerous times for this purpose, and that is despite the more kind of user-friendly upgrade that they did a while back. In terms of the suggestions then, adding content to the training, maybe inserting videos, and this is something that I've done recently with the Improving Writing Through Corpus course. So if you signed up for that course before and you want to go back to that and check out the new videos, do go ahead and do that. but adding more functions, for example, looking at citations and references, different filters for different subjects and writing styles, simple layout, accessible without extra stuff, more visual representation. So fixing that user experience is something that was seen as highly important. So to summarize, based on this quite large and lengthy undertaking with a good number of secondary school students, their perceptions of Corpus and DDL in general were very positive, and they did use Corpus to not only improve their use of the passive voice, but also to resolve lots of other language-related issues in free production, which is quite positive. But what do they want to see in the future? They wanted the simplest, fastest tools available, but they do like to make comparisons of different queries or results in one place instead of having to click through lots of different things to get to that analysis. So just being able to see the results and compare those results in one click is seen as very, very important. They found disciplinary specificity is very important. Their ability to limit searches by the topic or subject that they were interested in. And they did feel that the approach in general, the data-driven learning approach in general, was useful, but the tools that were currently available were just not doing it for them. Therefore, a new purpose-built Corpus tool was likely needed. So this brings us to the construction then of CorpusMate, our new platform. And I'm just going to very quickly share the link here in chat for those of you who want to play around with this. Oh, Carolina's already beat me to it. And as you're going through and listening to the rest of this presentation, feel free to check out some of the information for yourself. Developed by basically Vit, who's here with us today. He's the developer of many other popular Corpus tools as well. And he very gratefully agreed to work with me on this project to develop this tool. I think we both had a good shared vision about what the tool was about and why we needed it, and what we needed it to do, and how we wanted it to work. And after some lengthy negotiations with our university, we managed to get the funding together to build the tool. And we're very proud to be able to demonstrate that tool for you today and how it works. So the tool is basically a Corpus front end hosted online, and a number of publicly accessible corpora are used at the back end. This include, and again, it's probably easier to go to the about page here to let you see the different corpora that were used. So we began with the British Academic Written English Corpus, the BA or the BOR Corpus, as it's more commonly known. Again, this is a publicly available corpus of university-level student writing across many different disciplines. Then a TED Talk corpus using transcripts from TED Talks, so that's spoken data. The Simple English Wikipedia, which again is freely available, downloadable. Transcriptions of learning videos from the BBC Teach website, straight from the website. The Elsevier OACCBY corpus, which is a quite large collection of scientific articles that will help us to round out the different science subjects within the other subjects that are covered by CorpusMate. And we also recently added more spoken data in the form of the British National Corpus 2014 spoken collection again, which is available, I believe, from the University of Lancaster. So taken together, these the corpora here span just over 50 million words of, well, 50 million tokens, including punctuation, and 50,000 documents. So that's some of the corpora that went into it. And we'll go through some of the other functions in a moment. Now, making this useful for younger learners, obviously, particularly with a lot of the corpus data, including the BOR and particularly the BNC, we were able to run this Python program over the corpus data so that we were able to remove any of the potential profanity or language, unsuitable language for younger learners or for conservative teaching and learning contexts. You can check this out here. The link is there at the on the actual CorpusMate website, so you can check that out about how that works here. The link, this is the special tool that's referred to here on the About page. So the offending sentences were filtered out from the corpus, and we're pretty confident that certainly in the searches that I've done, that we've done a pretty good job at removing any potentially offensive content that would be unsuitable for younger learners. So, but if you do find any, let us know. We're always glad. Maybe we can tweak the corpus data to do even better in that regard. Moving on, I already mentioned here the corpora used, but what you can see here is how that is divided across different school topic areas, and we decided on we actually had to narrow down the wide range of topics to condense a few of these, so that we ended up with an overall 20 different topic areas that are commonly found in secondary school curricula or university level syllabuses as well. This include geography, biology, mathematics, culture, history, general science, which contains a number of other smaller subjects, English language and literature, technology, physics, politics, chemistry, and others. So there are also a few that could not be neatly composed into different topics, but these make up a relatively small number of documents overall. So again, something else that was fundamental to the previous research that we've done with these younger learners, and there's also something that comes out of a lot of DDL research generally, is making corpus queries can be unnecessarily difficult. And this is the case. Things like Sketch Engine, for example, or platforms that use corpus query language syntax, or CQL, where you're basically putting in things like this, where word equals text, and then you put in like part of speech, and then you're basically typing in a code. And in the GPT era, we know that this is something that is probably just not going to fly for 95% of users who are not using corpora for research purposes, but are just using them as language learning and teaching tools. So we decided on three main operators. These are the wildcard. We can click here on the wildcard. They're just using the example that is given here on the front page. The question mark will, the question mark operator allows you to check the optional occurrence of a word. For example, here, do we need a small thing or a thing? This is usually good for checking the use of articles or unnecessary words. And then we have the slash, which works as an or operator between two words. So is it the indefinite article? Is it the definite article? And so on. So just three basic operators there and we give the clues for the example searches in the on the homepage for people to very quickly get an idea about what it is that they need to do. We can also search, as mentioned, for across the topic areas in a simple drop down here, and across spoken and written modes. We then also have pattern view, which is the simpler name that we've given to the keyword in context view, or quick view, as most people know it. I've often found that that's a very hard term for people to understand, so we simply named it pattern view, so that people can look at that and see that as a pattern, and that's something that has been quite useful in the past in helping people understand how to read this and why you might want to read text results in this way. So something else then that we have to mention here is the way that we are displaying concordances in CorpusMate, and most Corpus tools have previously given you the target word in quick view, in this kind of view, as you see here, with the context usually sorted out in alphabetical order from A. So then everything that you will get to the right of your search term will begin with A, down to B, down to C, and so on. You might also have the ability to search to alphabetize the left context as well. But as for anyone who's seen any of Lawrence Anthony's recent talks, and also the latest version of his incredibly popular tool, Ancon, we're starting to ask ourselves why we might want to organize concordance is in alphabetical order. Like, what does that do? How does that help us to quickly understand some of the underlying patterns language that we want to see? And the answer is you can't. Generally, if you're sorting corpora concordance lines and their context into alphabetical order, it really doesn't tell you very much without then having to click through lots of additional functions to get to those patterns that you're looking for. So we, in debt to Lawrence, also agreed to try to work on something that is, we feel, a much better way of very quickly getting to the patterns, the underlying patterns of language that are found within the corpus data. So the way that we've done it is that we are automatically sorting the context to the right in terms of the most frequent 4-gram construction. So that's the search term here in the middle in orange, combined with the most frequent 3-word combination that comes after that. Now, what that can sometimes do is it will then give you a very long list if that frequent combination is incredibly frequent in the data. So what we need to do then is to be able to still present the data in a way that is going to show you the different patterns, but at the same time can control for when that pattern is too frequent. And we've done this by hiding these behind clickable arrows here on the right-hand side of the screen. So remember that this is the most frequent 4-gram revealed the presence of. And if we didn't have those results kind of hidden behind the little arrow here, you might get this very long list of that same repeated result. And in more frequent combinations, this repeated result can go all the way down to the bottom of the page, and then that hides all of the other patterns that you might ordinarily see. But by clicking on the little arrow, you can then see the different results for that pattern. And because it's quite a frequent pattern, you can then be reasonably sure that this is quite a frequent and salient construction within scientific language, particularly here, based on my reading of the concordance lines. I can then click that to hide it again, and then go back to the second result, revealed that there was, click that, and then again, I've got the list of results there for that I can use. So again, this is the way that Lawrence is currently doing it with Anconc right now, and we're very pleased to be able to incorporate that functionality into the CorpusMate tool. Another interesting function is our ability to switch to sentence mode, which again is quite common in a lot of Corpus tools. But something that we find is that it can be difficult to find out where that sentence came from in the Corpus data. So we've managed to give each sentence here its label in terms of the topic heading that it is found under, and whether that result is found in written or spoken data. Not only that, but we've also built in an expand context button behind every sentence. Clicking this once will then reveal more context around the sentence. So we have here the sentence that came before and the sentence that came after. And we can click this quite a number of times to reveal more context around that term. I think we get about 5 or 6 goes. Vit may be able to confirm at the end of the talk, but you can see here that I've now basically got a whole paragraph where that term is revealed. And that's something that I don't think the other Corpus tools at present have the ability to do. But people have so far found this function quite useful when they want to get more information about the particular result that they're looking at. So where were we with PowerPoint? So we already mentioned here about visualizations, which were seen as very important in our learns. And here we take a leaf from Lingel's book in this regard. So for example, if I use a wildcard search on the data, and then I click the compare results function here, we get that similar breakdown with the visual clue based on the phrases that are found that are taking up the wildcard slot. So for example, here I see that revealed that seems to be the most frequent word to fill that slot, followed by revealed reveal the, reveals that, and so on, revealed by, and then some information about the frequency at which it occurs in the corpora that I've decided to search. And these are then clickable. And I can repeat the different functions that I've already introduced so far. Similarly, we can use some of those other operators, for example, the OR operator. Going to compare results, and this will tell me with some degree of certainty that the word revealed that is much more likely to appear than revealed what. So that's the compare results visualization. And again, very similar to the functionality of Lingle there. But an additional tool is the pattern finder tool, whereby this will automatically give you, instead of looking through the concordance results to get to this information. In my previous research, we found that just reading concordances of any kind can be very difficult for some people. And some learners just prefer to know the numbers. They like to look at the statistical information. So the pattern finder function will do that automatically, and it will give you the most frequent 4-gram that appears next to the word that you've entered into the search. This is generally best used with single words, because then, given the relatively small corpus size, once you start to get into 2 or 3, then you'll start to receive quite small counts in the corpus. But for example, here I can see, just by searching for revealed and using the pattern finder function, I can then see here those frequent results split down into the 20 most frequent 4-word constructions, including the term revealed. These are then clickable and will take you to the corpus data. The other visualizations that are available include the ability to search by topic and by mode. So the term say, for example, surprisingly is found in more written data than spoken data. But pronoun you, for example, may be more likely found in the spoken corpus. So you've got at a glance some basic breakdown of the distribution between terms in spoken or written data, which is useful for students who tend to write like they speak. And for those interested in disciplinary searches, you've got this visualization here that allows you to see the percentage of which your term is likely to be found in these different disciplines. So, for example, if I search for the term medicine, it's much more likely to be used in medicine than it may be in history or culture, for example. So again, these visualizations can help learners get to grips with the data in a quick and easy way. We already mentioned the ability to search within the disciplines. The additional function that students requested in the concordances was the ability to see kind of like a citation about where the result, the specific concordance result had come from. So in pattern view, clicking any of the orange hits will tell you where the hit came from in terms of which corpus was used, and then the topic that it was assigned to it. So for example, this first one is taken from the Bohr corpus, it's taken from the economics discipline. This is taken from the Elsevier or OACCBY corpus. This could be taken to a citation from Google Scholar of that corpus. And as you'll see here, we also made a quick link for students to go to the hit and be able to go straight to Google Translate, which will input the term from the concordance from the target word and put that straight into Corpus platform, where you might want to translate it into a range of different languages, or you might want to listen to the pronunciation
Result. Kết quả.
of the term. Again, this is a function that secondary school students requested, and we hope that they find useful going forward. Another important thing which is overlooked, I think, sometimes is in a lot of the software is kind of the reassurance or what will happen when you get a 0 result in the corpus and what that means. And we are very careful to make sure that we explain to users of the platform what it means when you don't get a result. And this came out recently in the work we're doing with these teacher trainees in Vietnam, where we searched for a term. In this case, they were wanted to look at the comparative form of the word far, and instead of further, they said fara, which isn't a word. So then when we searched for fara in CorpusMate, we explained that there are no results, but why do we get no results? It could be a misspelling. It could be a grammar or vocabulary error, in which case we might need to think about how to rewrite the search to get more results. And it could be that that particular term is not found within the disciplinary area, or it could be a term that is used in spoken or written data as well. So again, just to reassure learners about why you might not be getting a result is an important message for them to help understand what that might mean. So that's an overview of the tool. Right now, we're using the tool. We're piloting its use with language teacher trainees in Vietnam. This is for an upcoming special issue on assessing corpus literacy, but hopefully will be published in TESOL quarterly by the end of this year. So very much looking forward to that. You see here some of the lesson planning ideas that the trainees are already coming up with, some of the Corpus tools they're planning to use, but a number of these are also featuring potential lesson ideas involving the CorpusMate tool. So do look out for that. And as usual, we'll be very interested in feedback. And we do still have a feedback form here that you can get to that is embedded on the CorpusMate homepage there. So if you find something that's not working, or there's something that you think that we're missing that we could implement here, then do let us know. For example, I already have one for Vit that maybe he could put in there, and that's the ability that we have with Versatext, for example, to hide the quick result here. So you press a button to hide it, and then that allows students or teachers then to do some multiple choice or fill in the gap type activities. So that could be something we build in fairly simply, and we can talk about that later. But for now, basically, I think we're pretty much at the end. Don't forget also, just a very quick plug for the book that I mentioned at the beginning of the talk. So that's Using Language Data to Learn About Language. Carolina's going to put the link in the chat. This is a new open source book with 16 ready-made DDL lesson plans, suitable for learners at different proficiency levels. There's lessons for English, Portuguese, and Spanish in there. None of these lessons use CorpusMate. CorpusMate was in development at a later time, but you could certainly swap some of the tools in this book and some of those activities with the CorpusMate platform. So do check that out when you get time. That's pretty much it for me. What I'm going to do now is to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to hand over to the audience who can ask some questions. Thanks very much, everybody. So as usual, you can't hear the applause in the online setting. But now if you'd like to, I think if you want to type in a question in the chat, or you can unmute your microphones, turn on your videos, and we have Vit here who's agreed to join us. He can answer any technical questions about the platform, or if you have any more general questions, and I'll be happy to answer. So there's a question here from Dr. Jose Lema Alarcon. Have you considered explanatory videos to show users how to use your corpora? That's something that I have done, not with CorpusMate, but with the Improving Writing Through Corpora course. I could do this and embed the video on the CorpusMate platform, or at least embed a link to where the video is stored on YouTube. I think that's something that should be fairly easy to do, right, Vit?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's probably the best way to do it, rather than hosting the video on the platform, which will use up more of the bandwidth for the platform. We can certainly make those videos and then add the links to the platform so that people can go ahead and watch those. And that's something I can do over the next few weeks.
Yeah, we can easily embed the videos on the platform, not to be hosted on the same server. Yeah. But yeah, it's easy.
Fantastic. So another question here from Ali Yayali. Which platforms could you transfer the Corpus lines to? For example, Word or Google Doc? So that's an interesting question. I don't think that's something we've thought about before. They're kind of copy pastable, I guess, or not. Something I haven't tried myself, but maybe
it should.
the ability to paste concordance results. Is that something we could add?
Yeah, sure. It should be. You should be able to simply copy and paste, or what you can use is to print it. If you print it from the browser, the result should be simplified. I'm looking at that right now, and it can be easily changed and improved. I think we've implemented something similar for VersaText, and you just click.
Yeah. Basically, I'm looking at this right now. I had a go at printing it as a PDF, for example, and that's something that that can be done there. So all I did was as Vit said, I just right-clicked and pressed print, and it gave me the ability to see the results as a PDF. So that's something that could be useful. Copying and pasting them into Word didn't work particularly well, because what you get in terms of the way that it works, it will kind of paste it like this, which is probably not really what you want to see. So you've got like a 3-column table here. So this is probably not the best thing to do. And then pasting in plain text will give you something that looks like this, which is not too bad, but probably less useful. So what we would recommend if you were thinking of doing that would be to switch to sentence mode, and then this is something then that would be much better to copy and paste then presumably into Word. So that'd be something that you want to do. So yeah, that seems to work pretty well. So I hope that answers your question there. It's a good question, and again, something that we haven't thought about, but something that we may consider looking at in the future. All right, got a question then from Kevin. He's saying, I was wondering, when comparing corpora, how are the results normalized, etc., etc. So yeah, a bit. I think we managed this one, didn't we?
Yes, basically, yeah, we didn't spend a lot of time on that. But yes.
Oh, okay, right. So yeah, so that's something. Yeah, we could very simply add in a normalized frequency, say per 10 or per 100,000 words or something like that for results. I think that's something that should be simple to do. We did that, so that's not done with the visualizations at present.
Which one do you mean? Which
so maybe
visualization?
written versus spoken, for example.
Yeah, it's normalized. It's a percentage. Sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah. So in terms of the, say for example, if the written corpus is bigger than the spoken corpus.
Sorry, I don't understand your question.
Yeah, Kevin's got his camera on. Maybe he could ask directly.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, please.
No, what I just, because I remember in the presentation, there was that comparison between say, which is used more in the written corpus or in the written corpora than in the spoken one. And then I thought, well, there's about, was it 4 written corpora that contribute data to these results and just the 1 spoken corpus, the BNC? So I thought, may this actually pose some skew, or are those results already normalized to represent a factor, I don't know, 10 or 100,000 words?
Yeah.
Yeah, now I understand. So yes, you are right. There is not half and half written and spoken data in the corpus, and we are not normalizing for that, but it's something we can do easily. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I thought that's something that we were already doing, but if not, then that's a fairly simple fix to make. So again, yeah, just to get to that point there, in terms of the breakdown of the different corpora, we have a number of spoken corpus. So this is the TED Talks corpus is spoken, and then the BBC Teach is also based on transcriptions of videos, so that will be spoken data as well.
Mhm.
And then the BNC 2014. But yes, they're not entirely equal, so we probably, when doing the visualization, need to switch to a normalized mode, and that's something that we can do within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. Okay, then, all right. So question here from Duong Nguyen, can we search by topic and mode directly from the search box? It showed errors when I tried to do it. I mean, yes, we can do that. It does work. It may depend on what it was you were searching for. Because sometimes people try to search for things using search syntax that we don't have. So like Corpus query language, for example, I've had emails from people before trying to use that and then wondering why it doesn't work. And the answer is that that's because it's not implemented. We have just the three operators, so the wildcard, the OR operator, and the question mark operator. So maybe if you can replicate the issue, you might be able to email us later and maybe we can have a look at that. Question from Paula, can we comment on the reason for adding Wikipedia as part of the sources in the platform? This is the simple English Wikipedia, so it's slightly different from the main Wikipedia. This is something that if you Google this, again, I'm just going to very quickly share my screen here. You can see in terms of what it is written at, it's written in a simpler way than more traditional Wikipedia articles. So it's meant to be a lot more child friendly. And it also spans a great deal of different subjects or topics, which allowed us to expand the topic coverage of the different 20 different topics that we wanted to include on our platform. So I hope that answers your question there for Paula.
It has. Thank you, Peter. I agree with you. I just wanted to hear from you because I have had some friends asking, oh, why do we have Wikipedia? We have Ball and Wikipedia. It's like, but I totally agree. Thank you.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Okay, another question here we've got in the chat from Iram, can CorpusMate be used for language learning and teaching? If so, how? Hopefully I managed to explain a number of times in today's talk about how it may be able to do that. We are currently using it with language teacher trainees in Vietnam. So they're basically on the front lines and they're the ones going to be testing in person how it can be used for language learning and teaching. So I hope that's an answer to that question. Is other question about how CorpusMate handles different languages. At the moment, it does not, and we probably don't have a plan for it to do so. This is because other Corpus tools and platforms can handle that. It's not something that we were particularly seen as a priority with this platform, although we know, of course, that there are a great need for simple Corpus tools that will run in languages other than English. So we invite others to create similar tools that will have this function. Question here, the other question from EM, can CorpusMate be integrated with other tools or software such as statistical analysis platform or machine learning platforms? And the answer is no. And the answer is it will not. And the reason why is because there are other platforms that do those things very, very well. This is not intended to be a research platform. It is a teaching platform designed for trainee teachers, or primarily of students who are in secondary school level, or at the very least like a freshman undergraduate level. other tools handle research very, very well. This tool is not intended for that, and we probably don't see that being something that as a priority in upcoming versions. And I think I've answered everybody's questions, but we've probably got time for another couple more if people want to enter into the chat, or they can unmute their microphone. Well, that's fine. It's getting pretty late here in Brisbane. So with that in mind, I might wrap things up here and invite you all to try out the tool on your own. Please give us that feedback on the tool. Let us know if you're using it in your teaching. Let us know if you're using it in your research. It's something that we just like to share. I'm sorry, do you have a question? Thank you. I guess not. But yeah, it's something we just like to share with the community. And I guess in the ChatGPT era, are people going to use it? I don't know. It's something that we didn't foresee when we were designing and producing the tool, but we think it still has a place in the suite of tools that language learners and teachers might want to use in the classroom. And we hope that you find it useful. And again, whatever it is that you use it for, let us know. If even just one person uses the tool, I'll be pleased with that. Okay. So that's it from me. I'm going to stop the recording here, and we'll leave it to the next seminar series sessions, which are coming up very soon. And I'll send out all of the information about that when we've got our list of speakers. But thanks to Vit for joining in tonight and answering some of the questions, some of the things that we can have a look at. And also to Paula for saying hi, Carolina for managing the chat, and look forward to your feedback. Bye, everyone.